everybody, welcome to The World This Week. President Obama tries to reassure the Gulf states that Iran would not have a nuclear bomb, and they say, we want it in writing. U.S. forces conduct a special operation in Syria, killing Islamic State official Abu Sayyaf. Egyptian court sentences ousted President Morsi to death.
You only love was once, and when you're dead, you're done.
And B.B. King, the king of the blues, passed away at the age of 89. These are some of the issues we'll touch upon this Sunday. I'm joined by Barbara Paul-Rom, Defense News Bureau Chief in Israel.
Hello.
And Tal Shaleva, I-24 News correspondent. Hello, Tal. Barbara, what this special operation in Syria all about?
Well, let's keep in mind it's 4 years, almost to the day, after the Special SEAL Team 6 raid in Abbottabad, Pakistan, that killed Osama bin Laden.
4 years already?
4 years,
wow.
May 2011. And this time it was the Delta Force. Went in at dead of night, a few Black Hawks, V-22, and they apparently there were no injuries or kills to the U.S. Special Forces. They took away the wife of Abu Sayyaf, and Yazidi woman they claim was being held captive.
And you need a special decision by the United States president for another raid? I mean, according to Israeli military, they have those on a weekly basis, on a not daily basis.
But on something as spectacular as this, where a helicopter could be shot down, where it could cause such grievous injury and terrible PR setback to the United States, the Commander-in-Chief has to approve it. And the message is that the U.S. will not allow the terrorists to have any safe haven wherever they are.
Yeah, that's the message.
Yeah.
Of course. Tal, at the same time, President Obama is trying to reassure the Gulf states that everything is going to be okay. They don't buy it.
Yeah, he's trying to convince that the U.S. can do two things at the same time. On the one hand, sign a deal with Iran, and on the other hand, keep the close alliances with the Sunni world. And basically, the Camp David summit this week was a big photo op to pretend everyone's on the same page. Obama also needs it internally for Congress to convince Congress that not only Netanyahu, that Netanyahu isn't representing all of the U.S. allies, but Netanyahu actually does gain a shadow victory at the end of this summit, or at the beginning of the summit, because only 2 heads of state out of 6 arrived to the summit. So it's with mixed consequences and mixed results. It does seem that even though Obama did try to reassure the allies that he's on their side and he's got their back, he didn't give them what they wanted, and he also kind of overlooked their concern from lifting the sanctions. He had a remark that says that that the concern was overblown, and that Iran will be devoting the money to rebuilding the economy and not to continuing its expansionist methods in the Middle East. So he still has a long way to go with the Sunni allies, and it was a good week for Netanyahu, even though he wasn't there.
Right.
You know, Yaakov, not only that, what Tal was saying, the message was that all of this enhanced security cooperation with the GCC partners is not intended to marginalize Iran. He was giving a bone to Iran as he was dampening and turning his back on the security demands, and then all the while saying that the ironclad U.S. commitment to their security, when in fact, what did he commit to? To standing by, to work together with the international community and the partners to think about appropriate ways, including possible military action, to guarantee their security.
Interestingly, Israel and the Gulf states and Saudi Arabia suddenly are on the same page.
They have the concerns are mutual. The first one is about a nuclear Iran, and what will happen after the sanctions are lifted and Iran's economy will start to flourish again. And also a big concern out of the wandering U.S. loyalty in the region. That is the biggest concern for both of them. So yes, they are on the same page, and we hear Netanyahu saying that again and again. This is Netanyahu's new talking point, actually, to emphasize how Israel has a mutual and common and shared interest with the Gulf states or with moderate Arab countries.
And the London Sunday Times publishes today a report quoting American sources that the Saudis have reached a decision to acquire nuclear weapons off the shelf from Pakistan.
Yeah, well, that's been speculation for more than a decade. And You'll never get confirmation of that. It's been widely speculated that Saudi bankrolled the Pakistani nuclear program and A.H. Khan and his activities there. The point is that there should be, and there is very motions on the margins to bring this new missile shield. Let's follow that. Israel is so far ahead in missile defense. They have many layers. They have a huge early warning system. And if this cooperation that Bibi Netanyahu continuously alludes to is to come to some type of fruition short of some type of an agreement with the Palestinians, it will be on some type of interlocking, interoperable missile shield run by the Americans.
Okay, now watch President Obama kills any hope for peace in the Middle East.
I continue to believe that a two-state solution is absolutely vital for not only peace between Israelis and Palestinians, but for the long-term security of Israel as a democratic and Jewish state. I know that a government has been formed that contains some folks who don't necessarily believe in that premise, but that continues to be my premise.
Yeah, and later in an interview with Al Arabiya Network, President Obama said that he does not foresee any peace agreement in the coming year. So that gives a lot of hope to the new Israeli government headed by Netanyahu.
Well, I don't know how much hope the new Israeli government gave Obama to begin with. So, Netanyahu didn't appoint a foreign minister. He is supposedly keeping the post vacant in order to lure future partners. And it's kind of an imaginary fig leaf to the international community saying, well, I'm not appointing a foreign minister at this point because maybe one day Isaac Herzog from the Zionist Union will be joining. But basically, Netanyahu's narrow right-wing government has no positive prospects for the peace process being renewing, and the clash with the international community is inevitable because now Obama is dealing with the Iran deal, but after he concludes the Iran deal, he will be coming back to reassess and reevaluate the policy. At the moment, it could be a backtracking from the traditional U.S. veto at the UN Security Council. It could be an independent laying out of the parameters, and that's not even, we didn't even start to talk about Europe, which is another clash that is waiting and will be presenting itself even this week.
But Barbara, you look at the U.S. president, he looks desperate.
Did you see how beaten down he looked? And he was almost trying to convince himself. This is going to be a really dismal 18-plus months until the end of his term, especially with regard to the U.S.-Israel relationship. Israel now has a deputy foreign minister who is believing in free prayer on the Temple Mount, a powder keg to possible religious war. You got a science and space minister who called Obama a dictator and not a friend of Israel. And of course, you have Naftali Bennett, who doesn't even acknowledge the existence of some kind of an occupation in the West Bank. When Moshe Ya'alon is considered the moderate in this very narrow right coalition, the chance of any type of synergy with Washington on this diplomatic issue is very nil.
With that, I thank you very much, Barbara and Tal.
Pleasure.
Nepal was hit with a second earthquake this week, and things were bad after the first one 3 weeks ago. We are joined by Libby Weiss. Libby came back a couple of days ago from the military field hospital operated by Israel's IDF in Nepal. Thank you very much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Describe to me the sights, the sounds, the smells of a disaster area like this one.
Sure. Well, immediately upon landing, we understood that we were in very much a crisis zone. The weather was very, very hot. We could see people lining up all around the airport, really looking for help. And as we drove closer to where we would set up our hospital, we saw total destruction, full multi-story buildings that had been completely collapsed, buildings that were more or less on their last leg and very near collapse. And it was clear to us that we were very much in a disaster zone. And immediately, once we opened our field hospital, we had lines of people that were waiting to come receive treatment and people that needed to be rescued from their buildings.
How did you set up there? How did you decide where to set up and what to do?
Well, the location of where we set up was selected in consultation with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and with the embassy there, and with consultation with the Nepali military. So we set up in a large field right near the military hospital that was already there, a hospital that was much destroyed, in serious need of assistance. We set up there. It took us about 12 hours, and then we had an entire, really a fully staffed, fully functioning hospital that was set up in about 12 hours.
Describe to me the people that you saw there.
Well, the people that we saw were people that had experienced, I think, something that they certainly will never forget, and something that most of us, I think, are very fortunate to have never experienced. People who came, who had been under rubble for days, who hadn't eaten, hadn't had any water, people whose everything that they had, everything was destroyed, their homes, whose families were perished, whose families they were disconnected from them. It was tragic, and on the other hand, it was also at least some sign of hope and something wonderful that we could at least help them in any way that we were able to.
What kind of injuries did you have to deal with over there?
We saw many people who came in as a result of having huge amounts of weight upon them, what's called crush injuries, people whose bones were broken, serious orthopedic injuries. We saw people who came in with brain injuries, women who went into labor. We saw really a vast variety of different types of injuries, but mainly the underlying factor were people who had been under huge amounts of rubble for hours, if not days.
Were there any special connections made between doctors and nurses and the people you were helping?
Yes, and I think it's something beautiful to see, which at the end, medicine, it doesn't matter where it's taking place, is something that truly connects people, and the connections that we saw between the doctors and the nurses and the patients that came in and their families, I think is something that I will always remember and take back with me. But there is no doubt that those connections were incredibly strong and will be maintained in whatever way technology allows us to maintain those connections from here.
Mm-hmm. Were there any faces or incidents that you remember strongly?
Well, I will always remember the 15-year-old boy that came in named Pemba, who had been rescued after 120 hours under rubble, and just hearing him say how he was so excited to be found. Really something so basic that he would call out for help. He, at some point, didn't think that people were going to come anymore. And to be surrounded by people who were taking care of him, and to see how his doctors felt, and that moment of triumph among all of the destruction, I think is something that will stay with me forever.
And then comes the moment and you decide to leave. Are they capable of helping themselves in Nepal?
Well, the facilities there and the Nepali people themselves are incredibly strong. And I think it's something that's critical and necessary to be able to overcome such a difficult and traumatic event. They are very, very strong. The facilities there, of course, are being used to the maximum, but the facilities exist there. The people know what they need to do to be able to get through this trauma, and of course there are other international organizations that are also helping just as we were there. So certainly something like this will take time, but I have absolutely no doubt that the people of Nepal will be able to overcome this.
Libby Weiss, I thank you very much.
Thank you.
Finally this week, a tribute to B.B. King, the king of the blues, who passed away on Friday at the age of 89. Here's ABC's Dan Harris.
A lot of people think that when you play blues, it's only because you blue. I can play blues and feel better, because blues to me is sort of like a tonic. It's good for whatever ails you.
More than anybody, B.B. King kept the blues alive, a music born in poverty-stricken Southern black culture, nurtured in pain, but also brimming with sly good humor. B.B. King mastered it.
I don't think there's any bluesman that has had a bigger influence.
I think he was the greatest guitar player that ever lived.
The blues guitar legend was born Riley B. King in a segregated Mississippi Delta area in 1925. He worked on a cotton plantation from early boyhood.
I'm very proud of those days, working on a farm.
One of his uncles changed his life when he gave him a guitar. When King was 20, he moved to Memphis and worked as a DJ. On the air, Blues Boy King sang and played guitar. Soon, he was discovered, got his own record contract, and Blues Boy became BB.
Thrill is gone away from me.
Always by his side, his guitar, Lucille.
That's Lucille. That's my girl. Only girl I ever had that never argues with me.
There were other women in his life. B.B. King fathered 15 children by 15 different women, while still hitting the stage more than 200 times a year. He played for audiences around the world, including presidents.
My neighbor and friend from Itta Bena, Mississippi, B.B. King. Please come up, B.B.
Thank you.
He even presented Lucille to the Pope and received numerous awards, multiple Grammys, and the Presidential Medal of Freedom, all for playing the blues like no one else. The music, B.B. King once said, is really the story of life. Dan Harris, ABC News.
We'll miss B.B. King. This has been The World This Week. We'll see you here next Sunday. Have a great week.